My wife left me for her brother. Or at least, that's who we all thought he was. It was a Tuesday morning, ordinary as they come, the kind where you smell the coffee before your eyes are even open. I was standing barefoot in the kitchen, scrolling absently through emails on my phone, when I heard the distinct zip of a suitcase. At first, it didn't register. I assumed she was packing for one of her occasional work trips. Lizzy was a corporate event planner, constantly flying to Phoenix, Chicago, LA. A suitcase wasn't unusual, but when I looked up, she was standing in the hallway, not dressed for business. Jeans, a hoodie, no makeup, eyes puffy like she hadn't slept all night. And the suitcase? It wasn't her usual roller. It was the big one from the closet, the kind you use when you don't know how long you'll be gone. "Where are you going?" I asked, stupidly. My voice cracked. I already knew something was wrong. She hesitated, her fingers clenched tighter around the handle. "I'm leaving," she said. No preamble, no apology, just that. I blinked. "Leaving where?" Lizzy looked down, took a breath, then met my eyes. "I'm in love with someone else." My lungs stopped working. I heard the fridge humming behind me, the ticking of the stupid decorative clock she insisted on buying from Etsy. The silence between us roared. I swallowed. My tongue was dry. "Who?" She looked away, just for a second, but it was enough. She whispered the name like it was a confession she'd rehearsed for months. "Richard." I laughed. Actually laughed. A short, confused, bitter sound. "Richard? Your brother Richard?" Her jaw trembled slightly. She didn't answer. What the hell are you saying?" I felt my skin go cold, like my brain couldn't process the words, like she was speaking in a different language. "I'm not explaining it right now, Tom. I can't. I need to go." "You're leaving me? For your brother?" She flinched. "It's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I barked out, because it sure sounds like incest. That made her wince like I'd hit her. "It's not like that. He's not." She stopped, her lips pressed into a thin line. "He's not what, Lizzy?" "Not your brother?" I scoffed. "You grew up with him. Shared a bathroom. You called him my annoying big brother every Thanksgiving. And now you're saying what? He's your soulmate?" She didn't answer, just gripped the handle and stepped toward the door. And in that moment, I didn't follow her. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot and paralyzed, while the woman I thought I knew disappeared with a suitcase and a lie I couldn't begin to understand. I didn't know it yet, but everything I thought was real, my marriage, my family, even my memories, was about to unravel. And it all started with one word: Richard. After Lizzy walked out that morning, I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Not really. I'd drift off for a few minutes, then snap awake, soaked in sweat, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. My brain wouldn't shut up. It kept replaying everything, rewinding, analyzing, obsessing over moments I'd long forgotten. And then it hit me. There were signs. They weren't flashing neon, more like little cracks in the paint, things you don't notice until the wall starts to fall apart. Richard used to crash at our house a lot. Always with some excuse. Big fight with Carly, or my lease is a mess, or didn't feel like being alone tonight. You guys don't mind, right? At the time, I didn't. He was Lizzy's older brother, and they were close, always had been. I even admired it. I never had siblings, just a dad who disappeared and a mom who overcompensated. So watching Lizzy and Richard joke around, finish each other's sentences, tease one another about childhood memories, it felt warm, familiar, safe. But now all those nights on our couch, all those dinners where he pulled up a chair like he lived here, none of it feels innocent. There was one night about a year ago. I'd just come home late from a site visit, drenched in rain, tired as hell, and I walked into the kitchen to find them laughing about something, standing close. Too close. Richard reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. It was intimate. I remember standing there in the doorway, unnoticed for a second. Then Lizzy spotted me, and her face changed, like I'd walked in on something I wasn't supposed to see. But I pushed the thought aside. They were siblings. What else could it be? Now I know. Now I see it all too clearly. The way she used to get text messages during dinner and smile at her phone. I'd ask who it was, and she'd just say Richard, like that explained everything. And maybe it did, back then. I remember a barbecue last summer. We had friends over, burgers sizzling, drinks flowing. I was manning the grill while Lizzy and Richard were setting the table. I turned my head just in time to see him brush his hand against hers, a little longer than necessary. She didn't flinch, she smiled. And that road trip to Vancouver? God, it was supposed to be romantic. A couple's getaway, Lizzy, me, and, well, Richard, third-wheeling like always. But somewhere around the second day, it was like I disappeared. They sat next to each other in restaurants, shared playlists in the car, even took long walks to clear their heads without me. I chalked it up to sibling stuff. Inside jokes. Maybe they just needed to reconnect. How blind can a man be? I trusted her. I trusted him. I would have bet my life that they were just close. That their connection was platonic, deep, familial. The kind of bond I admired, even envied. And now? Now every memory feels like a lie wrapped in comfort. A betrayal hiding in plain sight. I'm starting to wonder if I ever really knew either of them. It was 3 days after she left. The house was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt abandoned. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. The closet door hung open like a wound, exposing the empty side where her clothes used to be. I was sitting on the couch, half-dressed, clutching a mug of coffee I hadn't sipped in an hour, when I heard the front door open. She didn't knock. Lizzy stepped inside like she still belonged there. Her hair was tied back in a low bun, her face bare, and she wore that same damn hoodie, the one I bought her at the Pike Place Market 3 winters ago. It used to hang off her shoulders when we'd curl up and watch movies on Sunday nights. Now, it just looked foreign. She didn't look at me. Just started walking toward the bedroom, a cardboard box in her arms. "You came back," I said hoarsely. "I told you I'd come get the rest of my stuff." I stood up. My heart was pounding, but my body felt heavy. I followed her down the hall, watched as she began tossing sweaters into the box like none of it meant anything. "Wait," I said. "You don't get to just pack and go." She paused. Her back stiffened. "I think I deserve an explanation," I said. My voice was rising now. "You blew up our marriage. You left me for your brother. And I'm just supposed to stand here and let it happen?" She turned slowly, and for the first time met my eyes. "He's not my brother." I stared at her, not understanding. "What?" She swallowed hard, and I saw it. Hesitation, guilt, something like shame flickering in her face. "He's not my biological brother, not even close." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "What the hell does that mean, Lizzy?" She sat down on the edge of the bed and set the box beside her. "A few months ago," she said quietly, "my mom told me something she's kept secret for years. Richard. He was adopted. Sort of. He's not related to me by blood, not even legally anymore." I just stood there, frozen, confused. "When my dad married my mom," she continued, "he already had Richard, a son from a previous relationship. But the woman, Richard's biological mother, disappeared. She signed over rights when he was a baby. My mom raised him, called him her own, but he was never really hers. Or mine." I felt something twisting in my chest. "So you're telling me, all these years, you knew him as your brother?" Because that's what I was told. That's what I believed. But it wasn't true. And when I found out, she trailed off. I finished the sentence for her. "Everything changed." She nodded. I stepped back, needing air. "Space. So what? That makes it okay? You lied to me, Lizzy, for 2 years. You were sleeping with him while we were married." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. We didn't plan for it to happen. We tried to stop. We thought it was wrong too. But after I found out the truth, we couldn't pretend anymore. My voice cracked. "You're saying that only the label of brother stopped you?" She nodded slowly. "I trusted you," I whispered. "I trusted him. You were my family. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, too late for that." She stood, picked up the box. The distance between us was no longer just emotional. It was a canyon. A chasm that had opened and swallowed everything I thought was real. And as she walked past me, I realized something truly unbearable. It wasn't just that I lost my wife. It was that I never really knew her at all. After she left for the second time, this time without looking back, I stopped eating. I wasn't trying to starve myself. I just forgot. Time bent in on itself. I would sit on the couch for hours not realizing the sun had set, that the house had gone dark. My mind refused to accept the shape of this new reality. It kept clawing backward, grasping for something solid, something I could name. When did it start? That question began to haunt me. And I needed to know, not because it would change anything, but because not knowing was a different kind of torment, like trying to patch a wound without understanding how deep it really went. So I started digging. It began in my office, the one room she never really entered unless she needed printer paper or to tell me I was working too late. I closed the door behind me and sat at the desk, the soft hum of the computer suddenly loud in the silence. There was a folder on the desktop I hadn't opened in months, shared memories. A synced backup of our old Google Photos account, the one we used back when we were still in that annoyingly domestic honeymoon phase, before separate cloud storage, before passcodes. I hesitated, then clicked. Thousands of photos bloomed across the screen, smiling faces, Christmas mornings, wine-stained selfies from Napa, us at a pumpkin patch, laughing with cider in hand. I felt like I was staring at ghosts. Then I noticed the dates. One caught my eye. July 14, 2 years ago. Lizzy had said she was traveling for work, attending some industry conference in Portland. I remembered because that was the same week Richard texted me that he was in town crashing with a friend. We'd tried to grab a beer, but our schedules never aligned. I clicked into the folder, and there it was, a photo, blurry but unmistakable. Lizzy, in a hotel mirror, wearing one of those white fluffy robes, holding her phone at an angle, one of those classic casual selfies, but in the reflection behind her, sitting on the bed with his shirt half unbuttoned, was Richard, smiling, like he belonged there. The timestamp made my stomach lurch. She had sent me a photo that same evening, room service and a book, saying she was exhausted from meetings. I had believed her without question. The flash of the photo stung my eyes. My chest tightened. I kept scrolling, suddenly frantic. More images trickled in, one of them clinking wine glasses on a balcony, another in front of what looked like a rental cabin in Whistler, a full month before they claimed to have learned about the adoption secret. Lies stacked on top of lies. 2 years. 2 years of this. Of her coming home, kissing me goodnight, acting like nothing was wrong. I leaned back in the chair, my throat tight, stomach churning. It wasn't just betrayal. It was performance. Mastery. She'd looked me in the eye for 2 years while sleeping with the man I thought was her brother. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood. My whole body buzzed with rage. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. I didn't even know who I was angry at more, her, him, or myself. I should have seen it. But I hadn't. I was the fool in a play I never auditioned for, the husband who thought he had a partner, when he was just a placeholder, background noise to a twisted romance that flourished behind closed doors. And the worst part? She still had the nerve to look me in the eye and say, "We didn't want to hurt you." I hadn't seen Mary Ann, Lizzy's mom, since the day of our engagement party, when she hugged me and whispered, "You're good for her. She needs someone steady." Funny how those words echoed now, brittle and hollow. I didn't tell her I was coming. I just drove. Her house was just 20 minutes away, tucked in a quiet, tree-lined street in Redmond. Same lace curtains, same ceramic wind chimes on the porch that sang whenever the breeze passed. When she opened the door and saw me, she hesitated just a second too long. "Tom," she said softly, voice thin with surprise. "I wasn't expecting. I need to talk," I cut in gently. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside without a word. The living room was exactly how I remembered it, crowded with old furniture, shelves stuffed with framed photos, half of them tilted from dusting or gravity or time. A place frozen in its own kind of nostalgia. "I'll make tea," she said, like this was an ordinary visit, like everything hadn't burned to the ground. We sat opposite each other, her in her usual floral armchair, Me on the stiff love seat where Lizzy and I once watched Christmas movies, while Marianne made popcorn. She poured the tea carefully, placing the porcelain cup in front of me like a peace offering. I didn't touch it. Is it true? I asked. She didn't ask what I meant. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her own cup. Yes, she said finally. It's true. Richard isn't her brother. She nodded, staring down at her lap. He was my husband's son, from his first marriage. He was 4 when he came to live with us. I raised him like my own. So, they're not related. Not biologically. No, not biologically. Her voice cracked. But they were raised like siblings. They called each other that. Always. My stomach turned. Did you know? I asked. My voice wasn't angry, just tired, hollow. About them? She looked up at me slowly, eyes shining. Not at first. I just thought they were close. They always had a bond since they were kids. But then, little things. What things? The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. The long walks, the late talks. After your wedding, it got worse. I saw him touch her hair once in the kitchen and she smiled like a woman in love. Her hands trembled harder, but I was afraid to name it. Afraid that if I said it out loud, it would make it real. So you said nothing. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being dramatic, that they'd never. She swallowed. But I think I knew, deep down. I just couldn't admit it. Not after everything we went through to become a family. I couldn't destroy what was left. Her voice broke on that last word. I looked around the room, at the worn furniture, the dusty pictures, the evidence of a woman who tried to hold a family together with knotted strings and silence. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that silence was its own kind of betrayal, that lies by omission still count. But I didn't, because for the first time I saw not just Lizzy's mother, but a woman who was just as blindsided by love and fear as I'd been. A woman who'd built a fragile house of cards and was now watching it collapse from the inside. I'm sorry, she whispered, wiping her cheek. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I stood slowly, leaving the tea untouched. We all got hurt anyway. As I walked out, I heard the wind chimes again, soft and delicate. Everything else felt broken. I met Carla at a little cafe downtown, one of those places that smells like cinnamon rolls and freshly brewed coffee. But today all I could smell was the faint sting of betrayal. It had been a few days since I confronted Marianne, since I saw the cold, distant way my life had crumbled in front of me. I didn't know what I was looking for anymore, just a way to piece the fragments together. I was sitting by the window when she arrived, her short, curly hair still damp from the rain outside. She'd always been the type to dress casually, but today she wore a green scarf that looked a little too fancy for this rundown corner cafe. She sat across from me and smiled faintly, then quickly looked down at her hands. There was a silence between us, one of those thick, heavy silences where no one wants to break the news first. Finally she spoke. I always thought something was off between them, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Her voice was careful, almost apologetic. She sipped her coffee slowly, watching me for a reaction. I leaned forward, my chest tight. You knew something was off? Carla's lips pressed together in a thin line. I didn't know, Tom, but... She hesitated. When you guys would go on trips, or when Richard would show up at your house again, it just felt wrong. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. But... She faltered, pulling out her phone. I've been meaning to show you something. She tapped on her screen and slid the phone across the table toward me. I glanced down at it. The screen lit up with a series of text messages. The conversation had taken place months ago, during a party we all attended at Richard's house. It was between Lizzy and Richard, but they'd both thought it would remain private. I read the first message, my heart dropping. Lizzy, I hate lying to him, but I can't lose you. The next line sent a shiver down my spine. Richard, we just need to wait a little longer. Once it comes out about the adoption, it will all make sense. We'll be able to be together, without all the lies. My mind was spinning. I scrolled through the rest. More texts, lines like, Lizzy, I know. I just hate how much he trusts me, how much he believes in us. Richard, he won't have to believe in us anymore. Soon it'll all be out in the open. I stopped reading, my hands shaking as I held the phone. So it was a plan, I said quietly, not knowing if I was speaking to her or myself. Carla looked at me, her face full of regret. They were waiting for the truth about the adoption to come out, so they could be together, without the shame of it being… She swallowed, unable to finish. A secret, I whispered. A lie. A big one. I sat back, the weight of it crushing me. All this time, all the nights she came home smiling at me like nothing was wrong. She'd been lying to me, living a life with me that was just a cover for her and Richard to wait until they could finally be legal, honest in their twisted way. And I had been nothing more than a convenient front. I had been the decoy. The words rattled through my mind. I hate lying to him, but I can't lose you. My heart felt like it had cracked open, and the cold air slipped through the fracture. I looked at Carla, my voice hollow. How long did they know? How long did she know? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I could see it in her eyes. She hadn't known, but she'd suspected. And even now, I knew she was just as guilty for letting me believe in something that was never real. I shoved the phone away, trying to push the image of those messages out of my mind, but they clung to me like smoke. We'll be able to be together. It had all been a performance, a show I'd been the fool to believe in. The rain was coming down heavier now, tapping at the window like tiny accusations. The world outside seemed as cold and empty as the hollow space inside me. It felt like my life had been nothing but a series of acts in a play I didn't know I was in, where I had been the unwitting villain. It's hard to explain the feeling that comes after the storm. The calm that follows is not peace, it's just emptiness. A kind of nothingness where everything feels surreal, as though you're watching your life from the outside, but you can't reach it. For the first few days I didn't leave the apartment. I barely slept. I drank more than I should have, trying to drown the thoughts, to numb the pain, but they wouldn't go away. The betrayal, the lies, the months of feeling like a fool. It felt like I was living inside a fog, struggling to breathe but suffocating all the same. There was a part of me that knew I had to do something, anything, but I couldn't bring myself to care. The world outside was just a blur. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Emails, work, anything. I just wanted to disappear. But then, something shifted. Maybe it was the way I looked in the mirror one morning. My face was hollow, eyes red and swollen, like a person who had already given up. And I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep spiraling into nothingness. So I called the number. I'd been putting it off for days, weeks even, but now I needed to do it. Therapy. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know if it would help, but I had to try. The first session was strange. Walking into that quiet room, the walls lined with books, the soft light filtering through the windows, it felt like a different world. One where people tried to heal, tried to understand. I wasn't sure if I belonged there, but I sat down anyway. Dr. Jackson was calm, his voice steady. He didn't try to force anything, but after a few moments of silence, he asked gently, "What brings you here today?" I looked at my hands, trying to find the words, but they wouldn't come. How do you even start explaining something like this? A marriage built on lies. A life you thought you understood, but now everything felt foreign. Finally I spoke, my voice hoarse. I don't even know who I was married to. Dr. Jackson nodded, not as if he was judging me, but as if he understood. You knew your wife. You just didn't know what she was hiding. I swallowed hard, the words like daggers, but they hit the mark. She wasn't someone I'd never known. I had loved her. She had been my wife, my partner, but there had been parts of her I never got to see. And now those parts were all that I could focus on. It took a while, but slowly I started to open up, talking about the past, the life I'd built with Lizzy, the dreams we shared, the trust that had been shattered. The memories felt heavy now, each one tinged with the knowledge of how false everything had been. But there was something cathartic about it too. Saying the words aloud, even if it hurt. I feel like everything is falling apart, I said after a while, looking down at the floor. That's understandable, Dr. Jackson replied, his tone calm but reassuring. When we're faced with the collapse of something we thought was solid, it's normal to feel disoriented. but it's also the beginning of rebuilding. Even if it's hard to see right now, you're taking the first steps. I hadn't realized how much I'd been craving someone to just say that. You can rebuild. That there was hope, even if it seemed so far away. The weeks that followed were no easier. I fought the urge to spiral, to let the alcohol take over again, to disappear into the fog of numbness. There were nights when it felt like everything was pointless, like I couldn't find the strength to care about anything. But I kept going to therapy, kept talking. It wasn't a smooth process, and there were days when I didn't feel like I was making progress. But every time I left Dr. Jackson's office, I felt just a little lighter, like I had taken off a small piece of the burden I was carrying, and I could breathe a little more easily. It was late one night, sitting in the stillness of my apartment, when I realized that the anger was starting to fade. It wasn't gone, it would never fully disappear, not yet, but it wasn't the thing that consumed me anymore. Now I was just empty, not numb, not lost in rage, but simply empty. And for the first time in weeks, that didn't scare me. I was finally able to see that I had space inside me to heal. I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive Lizzy, or if I'd ever be able to look at love the same way again. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long, the smallest flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't lost. Maybe, just maybe, I could find my way back. The message came late at night, an unexpected ping that shattered the stillness of my apartment. I glanced at my phone without any real sense of anticipation, as if whatever it said wouldn't matter anymore. I'm pregnant. It's his. I'm not asking for anything, just thought you should know. I stared at the words, letting them sit there in front of me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I almost felt nothing at all. No anger, no shock, just a strange emptiness that had been my constant companion for months. For a moment, I couldn't even process the reality of it. My mind flickered back to that night when Lizzy left, to the pain of betrayal, to the shattering of everything I thought I knew. But now, here was another truth, another layer to the mess that was my life. She was pregnant. I wasn't sure why she'd felt the need to tell me. Maybe guilt, maybe just a casual update in the twisted way our relationship had become. But it didn't matter. I didn't need anything from her, just as she didn't need anything from me. We were both moving in different directions now, and this message, this small final piece of information, didn't change anything. I deleted the message, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I didn't immediately reach for the bottle. I didn't need it. I didn't feel the gnawing desire to drown my thoughts. I put my phone down and stood up slowly, as if moving through thick fog. I hadn't been outside in weeks, had barely left the apartment except for therapy. But something about that message, the quiet certainty in it, made me want to step into the night, to breathe in the cool air and let the silence surround me. I grabbed my jacket and stepped out onto the porch, the familiar scent of the night air hitting me. It was crisp, the kind of coolness that reminds you of late fall. The street was deserted, just the soft hum of distant traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. I walked aimlessly, not thinking about where I was going, just letting my feet carry me down the quiet street. The sound of my footsteps was steady, rhythmic, almost meditative. I wasn't sure when it happened, but somewhere along the way, the knot in my chest started to loosen. The tightness that had been there for months, that constant pressure, was starting to ease. Maybe it was the simple act of moving, of putting one foot in front of the other, that allowed the space for a small shift inside me. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like everything was magically better, but I did feel something. It was like a weight had been lifted, just a little. The city lights blurred as I walked, the streets empty and cold, but somehow comforting in their stillness. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I wasn't running from her, from the past. I wasn't even running from myself. For the first time, I felt a quiet kind of acceptance. The pain hadn't gone away. The betrayal still burned, but I knew, deep down, that I was going to be okay. I wasn't sure what the future held. I wasn't sure if I'd ever fully heal or if the scars would always be there. But tonight, as I walked in the cold night air, I felt something that had been missing for so long, a kind of peace. And for now, that was enough. 6 months had passed since the night I'd walked out into the cold, empty streets, letting the weight of everything slip just a little. Time had a funny way of healing things, or at least making them less sharp. Life had continued without me asking for much. My routine had found its rhythm again. Therapy was helping. I was slowly getting back to myself, or at least to someone who wasn't defined by the pain of the past. But life, of course, had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected it. I walked into the cafe, the warm scent of coffee and fresh pastries immediately wrapping around me like a blanket. It was one of those cozy corner spots I used to visit with Lizzy before everything fell apart. The place hadn't changed. The same worn-out chairs, the same quiet hum of conversations in the background. I didn't expect to see them, didn't think I'd ever have to face them again. But there they were. Lizzy sat across from Richard, holding a small baby wrapped in a soft, knitted blanket. The baby's face was hidden, but the little tufts of dark hair gave me an instant impression. It was their baby, no mistaking it. I froze for a moment, my steps faltering. Lizzy looked different. She looked tired, exhausted really. Her hair was messy, pulled back haphazardly. Dark circles marred her once perfect complexion. Her eyes were distant, almost defeated. Richard sat next to her, his usual confident demeanor replaced with an uneasy tension. He didn't look at me at first, but when he did, there was something about his gaze, like he was trying to figure out if he had a right to acknowledge me. As if we weren't in the same cafe, sharing the same space, at the same table. I felt the pull of the past, but it wasn't like it used to be. The anger had faded. The betrayal was still there, but it was muted now, softened by time and the acceptance that life was messy, unpredictable, and full of disappointments. I stood there for a beat too long, trying to decide whether to approach them or walk away. I was still processing the strange, surreal reality of seeing them like this. As a family. Lizzy noticed me first. Her lips parted slightly, as though she didn't quite know what to say. "I am," she replied, her voice almost a whisper, like it had lost its vibrancy somewhere along the way. There was a long pause. Neither of us knew what else to say. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I wasn't sure what I felt, but it wasn't the overwhelming rush of emotion I'd expected when I imagined this moment. Finally, Lizzy spoke again, her voice thick with something unspoken. "It's not what I expected." I nodded slowly, my gaze flicking to Richard for a second before back to her. "It never is." It wasn't a dig. It wasn't a jab. It was just the truth. Life had a way of leading you down paths you didn't expect, and no matter how you tried to prepare for it, things rarely turned out as you thought they would. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even upset. I was just free, and the realization settled on me like a soft, steady weight. This moment didn't belong to the past. It wasn't about us anymore. It was just another part of life that I had to accept, and for once, I could do that without resistance. I turned to leave, my feet taking me toward the door. Lizzy and Richard were still sitting there, the baby between them, a small family built from the rubble of everything I once knew. But I didn't feel anything but a quiet, almost imperceptible sense of peace. I stepped out into the crisp air, the door closing softly behind me. A year had passed since that chance encounter at the cafe, and life had changed. It was strange how quickly everything could shift when you stopped trying to control it and let things unfold naturally. I packed up and left Seattle on an impulse, driven by an instinct that told me I needed to be somewhere different, somewhere far from the ghosts of my past. I ended up in Portland. It wasn't part of any grand plan, but it became my new reality. The apartment was small but had big windows that let in soft golden light. It felt warm, even on the coldest days. I spent most of my time at home, working remotely as an engineer, taking long walks around the city and tending to my plants. Taking care of them gave me a sense of purpose, as if I could nurture something into life that didn't come with pain and betrayal. I also took long hikes up into the forests. Just me, the path and the trees that had lived for longer than I could ever comprehend. It was therapeutic. Sometimes I'd get lost in the peace, in the simple beauty of the things I had once overlooked. I wasn't running from my past anymore. I was just moving forward, piece by piece, the way you rebuild something broken without rushing it. And then there was Ashley. It was a lazy Saturday morning when I wandered into the library, as I often did when I needed to clear my head. She was sitting at one of the tables, a stack of books beside her, laughing at something in her book. Her laughter was infectious, warm. It made you believe that there was something good left in the world, even when everything else felt off. She caught me watching her and gave me a knowing smile. "What are you looking at?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I shrugged. "Just admiring your taste in literature," I said dryly, a grin tugging at the corner of my lips. Ashley laughed again, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Sarcasm, that's your game, huh?" I grinned back. "It's a defense mechanism." Her smile turned into something more serious, a bit of challenge in her eyes. "You don't seem like someone who needs to hide behind walls," she said. Her words hit me differently. It wasn't what I was used to hearing. Most people assumed I was all sharp edges, closed off, but with Ashley, there was something about the way she looked at me that made me want to let down the walls I'd spent so long building. Over the next few weeks, we ran into each other more often at the library. Our conversation started slowly but felt easy. She never pushed me to be someone I wasn't, and I could tell she noticed the cracks in me, the little things I never had to explain, things I had never shared with anyone else. With Ashley, I didn't feel the need to be perfect. It was a relief. One night I sat at my desk, looking out the window at the quiet street below. The city hummed softly in the distance. The plant on my windowsill was thriving, and I felt like, maybe, just maybe, I was too. I picked up my notebook, a habit I'd developed over the last year, and wrote something I never thought I'd admit. She broke me, but the cracks let the light in. The words were simple, yet they felt like everything. It was the truth. I wasn't fixed, not by any means, but I was learning to live with the cracks, to let them be a part of me, to allow the light in. Through them. Maybe that's all we can do. Accept the pain, let it shape us, and keep moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt okay with that.